Hello everyone, my name is Rick van Bruggen from Neo Technology, and here I am again, and I'm so excited I can barely restrain myself. It's my Uber boss on the phone again. It's been 18 months since the last interview, and here I have him back on the podcast, Emil Eifrem. Hi, Emil.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for finally inviting me back.
Yeah, so I'm sorry it took so long. It wasn't intentional. Believe me,
Sure.
please. Yeah,
Hi.
it's great to have you back. Thank you. Yeah, Emil, I mean, we've had a wonderful first edition of the podcast, but it felt like the right time at the end of 2016 to have you back on our program. So many things have happened this year, right? I mean, or these past
Yes.
18 months. It's been a crazy journey. Maybe we can kind of review those.
Sure.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, let me start with some of the product stuff first, right? I mean, two releases in 1 year, big releases in 1 year,
Big
3.0,
releases too. Yeah.
3.0 and 3.1, which we released this week, right? How do you feel about
Right.
those?
Well, I think I mean, it's a good question, right? I mean, I think whenever we push out a new release, I feel very good about that, right? It's typically the culmination of a lot of work that, of course, internally we've seen it for a long time in the planning stages when we put together, hey, this is what we're going to start building, months from now, and then we start building it, and now, okay, now they're working on it for months and months and months, right? And okay, now it's getting to some level of early quality, beta quality maybe, and we try it out to some users and customers, and then so by the time it hits GA, it's been quite a long time, right? And then it always is fantastic to kind of get that out to actually be useful for customers, right? Because ultimately, in agile, software management, you talk about inventory, right? Ultimately, it's only at that point that it's truly valuable, right? When it's actually used by users.
Absolutely.
And I think this year, I, I think 3.0 is a massive release, massive release. It truly is. I mean, we upped the major number from 2.x to 3.x, right? And I think that was very fair. The new driver architecture, right? The unlimited size storage format, right? The fact that we can put in unlimited sized graphs, right, with a high limit storage format, and then procedures, right, which I think is amazing. And those are just kind of a couple of headline features. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
bunch of other things as well. And then it's funny, right? We sat down. I guess we announced the beta of 3.1 at Graph Connect San Francisco a couple of months ago. And as I was sitting down reviewing the product section in my keynote with Utpal, our head of marketing at Neo, I first kind of talked a little bit about 3.0 to provide context, and then I talked about these are the key features in 3.1, the next generation clustering architecture, the security foundation. And I asked for his feedback, and I thought his feedback would be, well, I don't know, I think you should phrase this in this way and whatever, stuff like that. But no, his feedback was completely different. He just looked at me and said, holy, SH number one T, holy crap, let's say.
Yes.
uh, like the velocity is amazing, right? You just like 4 months ago, we released this extraordinarily huge release 3.0, right? And now, like, we're back less than half a year with like an amazingly huge release as well with the clustering architecture and security. Like, these are very significant features.
Mhm.
So I always feel good about, in summary, I always feel good about when we finally release software and get it out to customers, but even more so with 3.0 and 3.1.
What do you think is like the most significant feature that we've released in the past 12 months, in those two releases? What's your favorite?
Oh man, like
Yeah, come
Rick, you
on.
have kids. You can choose favorite feature. Oh man, come on, that's like choosing your favorite kid.
Uh, uh,
Um, well, but no, I
the most
like.
significant.
I'm
I
not.
asked for the most significant one. Yeah.
All right, so look, I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb here, and I'm going to say procedures.
Mm.
Actually,
Mm.
I'm going to say procedures because look, I think we've figured out the best way to express graph operations in any language uh, is Cipher. I think maybe it's not the most optimal, and maybe at some point we or someone else will invent an even better language. But I think Cypher is the best out there. But it can't do everything. And the fact that we now have a seamless way of writing the stuff that is easy to express using a general purpose imperative query language like Java or JavaScript or something like that, and write what's easy to write in that, encapsulate that in a procedure and have that seamlessly commingle with Cypher. So for the stuff that's easy to express in Cypher, you use Cypher. For the stuff that's easy to express in a general purpose language, you do that, and have both of those worlds seamlessly interact with each other. Yeah. I think that is, like, when we look back on 2016, maybe I'm wrong here, but I do believe that that's going to be the one thing that changed the world the most, if you will, the world of graph development.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's been fantastically received by customers, I can tell you that. So
yeah.
So both of those releases, we kind of announced them at Graph Connect, right? I mean, we've had 2 Graph Connects, or actually 3 since our last interview. But how do you feel about the conference and the audience and the growth of the conference?
Yeah, I mean, look, I always go on stage. I think I mentioned this probably in all my keynotes, that it's my favorite day of the year, right? It's a day or multiple days just focused on the amazing things that people are doing with the graph databases. And so it's just, for me personally, since I spend a little bit of time and have historically in the past few, decade or so, decade plus or so, spent some amount of time on graph databases, it's like a candy store for me, right? And I think our community is so positive and so enthusiastic. So I love that part. But and then just that's kind of the touchy-feely, the subjective stuff, right? But then also the numbers are amazing. I mean, we had, I think, over 800 people registered. Maybe it's 700, something like that, for London, which is huge. We were sold out. We were at the QE2, the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Center, which doesn't mean anything to me, but a lot of people in London, that really means something. Like, several journalists have told me, like, wow, that a company is really around when they can use QE2, right? And then fast forward just a few months more, like 4, 5, 6 months, and we're in San Francisco. We have over 1,000 bodies in the room. Right, 1,400 people registered, or 1,000 bodies in the room, and I think that conference was quite extraordinary. It's the biggest conference we've ever run, and so I think Graph Connect is here to stay, and I love them dearly.
Fantastic. Yeah. Have you rewatched some of your keynoting, specifically the one at the last San Francisco conference? Because I thought that was very well done, actually.
Rick, why did you bring up that one in particular?
Because nothing went wrong there, right?
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all. Well, no, I mean, I watched through some of it, and what's fascinating, of course, is I tend to focus on the content, right, and the substance and the narrative. But as you allude to, there were some logistical challenges, let's say, at Graph Connect San Francisco. And since you brought it up, just to put you behind the scenes, so what ended up happening for those of the listeners who weren't there is that I walk into the conference venue at 8:30. The conference kicks off at 9 a.m. always with my keynote, right? And the first thing they tell me is, like, we're having some AV problems. And I know, we ran through everything at 11 p.m. the night before with the AV team, multiple laptops, double-checked everything, triple-checked everything worked just a few hours earlier, right? But something has happened. I'm like, oh, well, whatever, they're going to sort it out. But as we creep closer and closer to 9 in the kickoff, they still can't sort it out. And so we hit 9 a.m., and at that point, it's still not working. And I don't know, we probably have 500 people in the room, I don't know how many people, but there's a lot of people in the room. And, I'm not that nervous. They'll sort it out, but it's 9:03, 9:05, and they still can't make it work. Yeah. For some reason, they can't get my laptop, my Mac, to show on both screens. And, finally, we hit 9:10, and the AV team, they just check out, say, sorry, we don't know, we can't solve this. And that's when the NEO field engineering team, then the engineers employed by us who help our customers, our customer-facing engineers, who can handle the pressure, And they basically, it is a crazy technical solution. They basically, since it worked on a PC, they get a PC, they run GoToMeeting on that PC, they run GoToMeeting on my Mac or whatever the Mac we're using,
Yeah.
and share my screen via that GoToMeeting via hotel Wi-Fi.
It's just
So
crazy.
yeah, and so end up going up on stage at 9:15, and I just say, screw it, I'll just kick it off and just start talking.
Yeah.
And then, these guys will have to sort it out, and I'll just try to click on my clicker. And then finally, as I was talking, I noticed that the slide started advancing, and I went into my presentation. But I had like a 5-6 second delay because it was using hotel Wi-Fi via GoToMeeting.
It was just amazing.
So
I was standing in the corner there, and I could see you guys at the AV stand standing there, and it was like a cloud of stress hanging over it.
What do you mean? I was smiling, I was calm.
Oh, fantastic.
That's the image that I tried to project.
Very well
but
done.
I think, in the end, it worked out very well, and I think people seem to appreciate the actual content, and we kicked off the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Well, another thing that I thought was amazing at the first Graph Connect this year in London was having our dear friend Mark Cabra on stage talking about the Panama Papers. That was a big event for us.
How amazing was that? So, I don't think most of our listeners would know this, but the mission of the company is help the world to make sense of data. Help the world to make sense of data, which is fairly precisely worded. Like, help the world means that help, right? We enable people. We're tool builders, right? We don't do it ourselves. We build tools for other people to do it, right? We enable other people. And the world means that we're not just focused on financial services or big enterprise, big, small, whatever. But it truly is. We want to touch everyone ultimately. And I don't think we've ever seen a more tangible example of helping the world to make sense of data. This is the biggest leak in journalistic history, over 11.5 million documents. They got petabytes of data that they got dumped on this organization, and with three developers, they used Neo4j and Blinkurious, and they made sense of that data, and which of course had huge political implications. For example, most prominently probably that the Prime Minister of Iceland, resigned due to things that were uncovered in this data.
Yeah, it was a big event, right? We had so much impact around that publication. I can only speak for myself, but here in Europe, the impact has been so resounding. It's been an amazing success, and I think also for all of us at Neo, it's been like a massive confirmation about what we're building matters.
Exactly.
It's a great accomplishment. Speaking of which. How does it feel to have $36 million in the bank?
Great question. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing that happened towards the latter part of the year. So more recently, we announced our Series D round of funding, and look, I feel amazingly good about that. Right? I think that again, this is pretty internal, probably not something that we talk super widely about, but it's not a secret in any way, shape, or form that in 2016 we were very focused on getting to cash flow positive. We've always had a fairly contrarian perspective on how to build businesses like this. I'm in Sweden right now, but I'm normally based in Silicon Valley, as you know, Rick, and then kind of there's a tried, true, and proven way of building these types of businesses, which is you raise a bunch of money, you get a bunch of free users, or quote eyeballs, right? And then you raise even more money, and then you raise even more money, and then you sell the company, right? And I'm emphasizing, and I'm exaggerating right here now, but there's a lot of truth to that, right? And we've always felt that we wanted to grow the company alongside our customers, and customer funding is always the best funding. But in 2016, we made an even stronger effort to get to cash flow positive because of uncertainties in the market, talks about whether we're in a bubble or not, right? And we were and still are actually on a very stable trajectory towards that, and we'll reach cash flow positive in early 2017, which is, I think, an amazing thing, and a huge thing for the company. At the same time, it's very clear that the graph space is now taking off. Right, there's more awareness about graph databases now than there's ever been before. If you look at kind of the competitive situation from our company's perspective, right? We've been reasonably alone in the graph space for a long time. There's been others, but like if in the past 12 or 18 months, there's been the IBMs of the world, the Oracles of the world, the SAPs of the world, like have all announced graph offerings, right? And I, of course, we drink our own Kool-Aid, but I do think that objectively speaking, we have the best technology out there. We have the best product out there. We just spend more time obsessing about graphs than anyone else on the planet, right? But that's not guaranteed to last, right? I think we need to wake up every single day and, focus on that, make sure that remains true. And when you go up against an Oracle or an SAP or an IBM, they have some significant balance sheets, right? They have a lot of gold in their coffers, right? And so with that as background, when we had an opportunity to focus on getting to cash flow positive, that was very, very valuable. But at the same time, raising another round of funding just allows us to invest more, make sure that we remain that number one player in the graph space. So that's why I feel extremely good about that.
Very, very good. So how does that, maybe we could talk a little bit about the future then, how will that spell out going forward? Where do you think this is going to take us in 2017? I'm sure the future is very bright, but some specifics maybe of where you think our space and our company is going?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think we're on a trajectory of increasingly more mainstream usage, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about the Panama Papers before. I think 3-4 years ago, like an alpha geek, a very, very hardcore developer could have done what the Panama Papers journalists did, because the core capability was there in the product, but you basically would have to be an expert, right, in order to do it. And then now, exactly, right, an expert developer, right, and like now today, it's provably, there's actual existence proof that the Panama Papers journalist was able to do it using our technology and things like Linkurious, right? And so clearly, that's one step along the path towards more mainstreamification, if you will, and that is only going to continue. And I think 2017 is going to be a significant year for us when it comes to making the core data model just more accessible to more people, more developers, more ops people, etc. So I think that's huge, and also tying it back to the investment, right? We're going to invest across the board. We're expand our geographical reach, more field engineers, more people in sales and marketing, etc. But the vast majority of the funding is going to go into the product, because ultimately, like these type of organizations like Neo, there's a lot of things going on, but ultimately it's all about building great product, right? Building a product that really solves a problem for customers, and that's what we're going to focus on with this investment.
Sounds really great. So I'm looking forward to the next Graph Connect conference in London then with another product release. Then is that the plan?
Well, I think that is the plan. Actually, I don't know if the plan is to announce it
Sure.
then, but well, I'm sure we're going to announce something. If it's going to be released the same day, I guess that's still TBD. But there's a lot of exciting things going on, and I think we did the two most significant releases we've ever done in 2016,
Yeah.
and that's on the back of the growth that we did on the engineering side in 2015, right? That's when we doubled the size of the engineering team. And that output, we're just in the early phases of that output. So, all the amazing things that we saw in 2016, expect even more in 2017.
Sweet. So I'm in doubt here, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to ask you to spend 2 more minutes, 1 more minute on the most fun thing that you had in the past 18 months, that you did in the past 18 months, and 1 minute on the worst thing that you did or the least fun thing that you did in the past 18 months. But I'm going to keep you to 1 minute because that's what I can do
Oh man,
now.
oh man, this is hard.
So
Well,
you want to start with the fun
start the
thing or
clock.
with the least fun thing?
Let's start with the least fun thing, 'cause
Yeah,
then we can end on a positive note. How about
yeah,
that?
yeah. Great idea. Yeah.
Oh, and in the 18, well, sorry, in the 1 minute, then thinking time is included, right? Because
Yeah,
I've
as
spent
long as you don't shut up while you're thinking.
all right. No, look, I can easily talk and think at the same time.
Very good.
Um, as for the least fun part, look, it ties back to the $36 million, right? Because when you run this type of a business, right, you can choose to run it in various ways. For better or for worse, we've said that we want to grow it with customer funding and with investor money, right? And then if once you made that choice, then like as the founder and the CEO, part of your job is to do fundraising. And I actually enjoy fundraising because you get to meet a lot of smart people and you get input on your business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that is not why I started the company. And that's I couldn't see myself doing that full time for a long for a year, for example, right? And fortunately, I haven't, right? But fundraising does take a lot of time away for the CEO, and that is not my favorite part of running a business. So that would be probably on the least favorite side
Yeah.
of things. I think on the most favorite side of
Hey, that
things,
was within one
I
minute.
mean,
Minute. Well done. Well done.
are you kidding me? Are
Yeah,
you kidding
yeah.
me?
Well done.
Man, wow. It's the most fun. There's so much more to choose from, right?
Yeah.
But I think, kind of the opposite of that is, if fundraising makes me more detached, from the business, then, I, I it's never as fun as when I actually sit down with end users and see what they use of our product, right? And just see the tangible impact of what we're doing. And that takes its expression in many ways. It's the meetings that you and I go to in London,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It is the local community meetup in San Francisco. It's the reading about the Panama Papers and what they do about that. It is talking with NASA, David Meza from NASA, saying that, look, you guys helped put mankind on Mars earlier, right? Thanks to you, we're gonna be on Mars earlier, years earlier than we would have been before, right?
Wow.
That's the impact your technology is having, right? And I think that ultimately is what excites me the most.
Fantastic. That was 1 minute and 5 seconds, but I'm going to give you that. That's fine.
Very, very generous of you.
Hey, Emil, one more thing. You have to promise not to stay away from this podcast for another 18 months. Let's make
Sure,
sure that we talk again, in the next 6 months or so. That would be lovely.
I would love to do that. It's always fun, my friend.
Thank you so much for coming online, and this is we're going to leave it for now, and I'll look forward to speaking to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Thanks. Bye.